So what if you worked on a Linux or a Mac workstation, or you were just familiar with Linux shell scripting, in either a true Linux world or in a Mac console world, and you wanted to leverage those skills to build solutions on Azure. Well, that's where the Azure command line interface comes in, what's called the cross-platform command line interface. It's a command line interface that supports the majority of what you can do in PowerShell, but it operates just like a command shell. You type commands, it produces text output. The great thing about the command line interface is you can install it on Mac, on Linux, or on Windows, and if you write a script in the command line interface, that exact same script, letter for letter, will work on Windows, on Linux, and on Mac. So it doesn't matter what you're comfortable with, you've got an option for doing automation and configuration from a command line within all three of those environments without changing a thing as you move between them. So let's take a look at how these commands are structured. Within the command line interface, it's a very simple topic, noun, verb setup. So for example, we have VM show, which will list all the virtual machines. VM endpoint, we can start it. And as you start to work through, you'll see that it's very simple and it's very discoverable, much like PowerShell is. Any command, you can put -- help on the end. It'll show you all the available options for the command. Very simple. Let's take a look at using the Azure cross-platform command line tools. So to get started, you install it using the Web Platform Installer. It's just one of the options that you can add. Now, to use it, I'm actually going to use the bash shell that's installed on Windows 10. So this gives me kind of a true, Linux-like experience, given the fact that this is, a true bash shell, not an emulator. And so to get started, I'm going to go ahead and log in. Now the login process is a little bit different in the sense that you've now got to go to a browser to complete the logon process. So we'll just open a browser instance and go to aka.ms/device login. And we'll just complete the logon process by pasting in this code they give us in the console. Identifies that this comes from the cross-platform command line, and we'll go ahead and actually just complete the logon. And once this is done, the console gets a signal that the logon's completed, and we can see that we're now ready to go. We can see we're connected to our subscriptions. And it's actually Azure account list, not subscription list. Now the thing to note here is that all the commands follow a very similar syntax. It's just an individual keyword, space, keyword, and as you work through, you have Azure, the item you want to work on, the account, and then the action you want to take list, along with any parameters that might actually pop up or might be required. So to give you an example of that, we're going to do something real simple, which is just create a basic resource group. So to do this, we'll kind of walk through the process of understanding the command structure and also how we use the help to navigate the command structure. So if I type Azure help, it's going to list all the different commands and objects that I can work on. And if I scroll up a little bit through this, kind of towards the top, let's go a little bit quicker, you can see that we've got an option for group. And this allows us to command, these are commands that help us manage resource groups. So what can we do with a resource group? Type Azure group help. This will give us help specific to what we can do with a resource group. If I scroll up a little bit, you can see that we can create a resource group. And to create a resource group requires two options, which are name and location. So we'll type Azure group create help. So we know it needs a name and a location. If we look at our options, we can see that N gives us name, L gives us location. The name of the resource group, and then the location where it's actually going to be created. So this is the Azure region. In our case, we're going to use East US. So we'll type Azure group create name, Call this one Cli Group because it was created with the client tools. Location, East US. And that goes into our subscription and creates that resource group. And we can now see if it's there using list. And we can see we've now got two resource groups. There's one I just created called Cli Group, and there's another one called Travel App that I created earlier. Another kind of interesting thing we can do is we can take a resource group and export that resource group as an ARM template and modify that template and then create maybe a second resource group, which is a modified version. So you can begin to see how we can take this unified client and then as we move from platform to platform, begin to fully automate our Azure implementation. So for that particular example, we'll do something like Azure Group, and we'll use the export command, and we'll export the Travel App Resource Group. That's going to download the entire contents of that resource group, which contains storage, which contains virtual machines and networks and all sorts of settings as an ARM template that we can now bring into our favorite editor and modify. And so we can see if we look in Windows Explorer, here's the JSON template that it just downloaded. And if I open that in Visual Studio or any text editor, here's the template right here. And we can then take this template as the basis for an additional deployment. One additional thing that I want to show you real quick is if we go log on to our portal. So let's go to portal.azure.com. This client becomes part of the automation that Azure produces automatically for any object that you create. So if the unified client is your preferred method of scripting against Azure, any object that you create, you can get the script that's appropriate for the cross-platform client just by getting it straight out of the portal. So if I click on my resource groups, and I go to my travel app, and let's say that I want to see the unified client script to actually create this resource group, I can simply come over here to the automation script area in the settings. And then in addition to all the normal automation options for an ARM template for Windows PowerShell or for .NET, there's a CLI option as well that will actually recreate this resource group. Now the key to this, this is a pretty long script. The key is kind of this one line right here, which is the same thing we typed in the client. Everything else is just structure that allows us to make sure, that this script runs successfully. If the object is already there, it doesn't attempt to recreate it and so forth. But at its core is that same Azure Group Create. So if you're creating objects within the portal and you want to turn around and automate those within the client, you can simply look at the automation script and then kind of pick out those individual commands that you want to help you figure out how to learn that automation.